Hello, everyone. Welcome to ISTE-VIT. It's a webinar on cloud fundamentals and best practices. Our guest speaker, Ms. Vijeta Pai, would be joining us shortly. I hope all of you can hear me properly. If yes, could you please just let me know in the chat box, in the live chat box? Okay, thank you so much. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good too. So I think we should start off.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. ISTE-VIT is excited to welcome all of you to today's session on cloud fundamentals and best practices. We are a national student chapter which imparts technical knowledge to budding engineers so that they can become exceptional professionals. Today, we have with us our esteemed guest, Ms. Vijeta Pai, who is a pioneer in the field of cloud technologies. She has been a mentor for countless students and a project manager for over 5,000 organizations. She uses her vast knowledge on cloud technologies and power of storytelling and analogies to demystify cloud fundamentals. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you for joining, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Akriti, and thank you everyone for tuning into my session. So I hope you'll be able to take some things away, and we'll have a question answer session towards the end where you can ask any questions you have after the presentation. And I'll just be scratching the surface, giving a very brief overview of cloud fundamentals and show demos in between. So I hope this will be a productive session.
It will be an amazing session, ma'am. We are sure of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akriti.
So let's dive right into it. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. I will do one thing. I'll share my screen and we can start off.
Yes, ma'am.
Can someone confirm if my screen is visible? Sure. I'll start off. So yes, hello and welcome to my talk on cloud fundamentals. I'm Vijeta, the creator and writer of Cloud Demystified. And like Akriti mentioned, it's my passion to help make cloud technologies or even emerging technologies accessible to everyone, whether they are technical, non-technical people, students, professionals, or anyone who's interested to learn more about cloud technologies. So without much ado, let's begin. So, what is cloud computing in the first place? You might have heard of the buzzwords around, and many people have discussed that this is the in thing right now. So, what do we mean by cloud computing? Is it an abstract concept? Is it something we see in our day to day lives? Let's start by demystifying that. So, cloud computing is basically a shared environment where servers, networks, storage, development tools, and applications are centrally hosted. Think about this as a shared environment. So, before that, let me move on to the basic premise of cloud computing in the first place. All organizations, no matter what they serve, have a lot of data with them. Whether it's a restaurant, whether it is a startup, or whether it's a big enterprise, they have a lot of data. Whether it is customer data, internal data, or anything for that matter. Other than data, they also have a lot of applications running. So just think about the logistics here. If you have a lot of applications running, you have a lot of data, you have a lot of things that you are storing. You need somewhere to store all of that. So Companies have different data centers which are hosted on-premise. By on-premise, I mean they're hosted in a data center, physical data center, and they have to maintain that. Think about all the obstacles they have to face when they have to maintain an on-premise infrastructure. They have to make sure that the infrastructure is maintained, the updates are done regularly, or even very, very small things like making sure that everything is plugged in. It's a lot of headache, and you need a dedicated team to manage that. Just because of all the overhead we have when it comes to on-premise infrastructure, it has become very cumbersome for companies who want to scale up. I'll give a very simple example. All of you have heard about ShareChat, right? It's a unicorn startup that is growing massively. They had a lot of data and they scaled up from 2 million to 130 million. Just think about the number here. It's a big number in the just 1 year. It's because of the pandemic and people are getting more and more acquainted with technology and also the free data that is available these days. Now, instead of working on their application and working on just making sure the user experience is great, what happens if they have to worry about maintaining the infrastructure on premise and also the servers, all the hardware tools? What would happen? They would completely miss out on their main point. They would have to they have a dedicated team to look after that. They would need to make sure the data is maintained. They would need to make sure that nothing is lagging because the people are growing and growing. There are a lot of people who are joining. That is where cloud computing comes into play. They moved on to GCP recently to make sure that all their data is hosted on GCP servers. So the headache of maintaining and taking care of the infrastructure is GCP's headache. By GCP, I mean Google Cloud Provider, for those who are new to this. So that is what cloud computing does. It helps host all your network, storage, development tools, and applications in a central place, just to make sure that the organizations don't have to worry about any overhead when it comes to maintaining the servers or the infrastructure. So they can just work on their application and data without have to worry about all these technical or maintenance activities. That is what cloud computing is all about. So like I said, the organizations can do away with physical data centers and servers, and they just have to host it on a platform. I'm going to show a demo in a while, so you will understand what I mean by a Google Cloud platform or even a cloud platform for that matter. What are the advantages of moving to the cloud? Think about the example I just used here. So the advantages of using a cloud is data processing and analytics. All these cloud providers have really good data processing and analytic capabilities, using which people can analyze all the big data they have. What do I mean by that? Companies get a lot of data into their systems. So if the cloud providers have a really good capability for organizations to look at the data, analyze them, and make performance better for the users. Next is agility. So once you move on to the cloud, your system and the applications become much more agile. So what I mean by agile, the speed increases and you can adapt very quickly to the changes. You don't know what changes are going to happen in the world, right? Depending upon the situation. So cloud providers help that. So the applications or the organizations can be more agile in nature. Next, we have scalability. What do we mean by scalability? Just think about the example I used. So ShareChat had people growing exponentially. I mean, that was a huge, huge growth. Their systems need to be equipped to handle this kind of massive change. Cloud providers help with that. You just need to host your applications on the cloud, and the scalability is taken care of by the cloud providers. You can scale up and down based on load. By load, I mean the number of users who are active at that moment or the number of users who are downloading the application without having to worry about performance issues for them. So that is what we mean by scalability. Next is lower infrastructure maintenance. Like I mentioned, they don't have to maintain a physical data center. They just have to worry about their application and and making performance good for their users. So there is no infrastructure or very, very low infrastructure maintenance. If there's any kind of maintenance, it is in terms of security and security patches, which I'll be discussing in a while. And the last is lower cost. Just think about this. They close their entire data center and they move on to the cloud. They don't have to pay for the physical hardware. They don't have to pay for the space. They don't have to pay for electricity. They don't have to pay for having a maintenance staff. They don't have to pay for a lot of people, who are involved in managing a data center. A data center is not an easy thing to manage. It is huge. There's huge spaces that are rented out. There's a lot of electricity, and the data center needs to be up and running 24/7. So just imagine the amount of electricity and the resources that are used there. So they can completely wash their hands of that, and that cuts down on the cost. Now, here is the diagram. So this is what I discussed. Good data processing and analytics, which is provided by the cloud. Agility, that is speed, that can be provided by the cloud provider. Scalability, as in if you have a lot of users coming onto your cloud, the cloud helps scale up and down based on the load that you're getting. Lower infrastructure maintenance, that is you don't have to worry about maintaining a physical data center. And lower cost, that is you can do away with all the cost that is associated with the physical data center. So just take a minute to process that, and I will move on to the next slide. So what are some types of cloud providers? I keep mentioning the word cloud provider here and there. So what are the different types? This is very important because once you understand what type of cloud providers are there in the market, you can understand which one to go with, because it's not a one size fits all, just like any other service. Cloud providers have different models which it follow. So the first we have is a public cloud. What is a public cloud? Sorry. And the second is the private cloud, and third is hybrid cloud. Let's discuss this one by one. So what is a public cloud? Public cloud is a space that is shared between organizations. Now, I want you to think of a scenario. You all have exposure to some hostel or PG accommodation, right? What happens out there? You are rented out a bed which you share with in a room that you share with another person, right? So you and your roommate share a space, that is you share a room, but then you have your own bed, you have your own wardrobe maybe, or you have your own space out there. So you are sharing a space, but at the same time you have your own privacy as well. That is how a public cloud provider works. The space is open, and it is open to the organizations, and these organizations rent out a VPN or a virtual private network or any other application on the cloud, and that space is shared between organizations. Now, when I say shared, it doesn't mean that you can just encroach into any other organization's data. There are very strict security measures around that. Think of this like the PG example I just gave. You have your own bed, doesn't mean that your roommate and your roommate share the same bed, right? So it is completely different. It's a room that is shared by both of you, and at the same time, the space is shared between two people. So that is how the public cloud provider works. There is a space that is available for all the organizations, and the organizations can rent out a VPN or any other service inside that public cloud provider and use it to run their applications. That is the concept of a public cloud provider. What is a private cloud provider? It is a space exclusive for one organization. Now, I want you to think about a rented house. So suppose you move to a new town and you decide that you want a 1 BHK for yourself, and you pay a rent and you stay in a 1 BHK. That is called a private cloud provider, where the cloud provider is given a space exclusive for themselves. Now, what are the advantages of this? First of all, you have your own privacy. You don't have to worry about a roommate in your room, right? And you don't have to worry about privacy. But the disadvantage there, it is much, much more expensive than staying in a PG or a hostel. Similarly, private cloud providers are much more expensive because the resources are not shared. It is exclusive for one organization. So public cloud providers are much cheaper compared to private cloud providers, but people have their own apprehension around security, even if there are a lot of security measures taken into consideration. But still, there is this kind of apprehension or a doubt in people's minds. So that is where the private cloud falls in. Now, people, what if they want the best of both these two worlds? Like if they want some kind of privacy and at the same time, they don't want to spend a ton on the cost, because that would defeat the entire purpose, right? If you're paying a lot of money on the cloud provider, might as well have your own data center, right? That is where the hybrid cloud provider comes in. And this is really, really popular right now. So you use both the public and the private cloud when it comes to a hybrid cloud provider. Think of this like a PG, but you have an entire room to yourself. So you're staying in a room all by yourself. There are people around, there is a person to take care of everything. So, for example, if there is an electricity cut, or if your fan is not working, you don't have to go and repair the fan. The PG owner or the hostel owner is going to take care of the repairs. So basically, you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. You don't have to worry about painting the house. You don't have to worry about paying the electricity bills. But at the same time, the cost is much less than having a place for yourself. Like if you have your own 1 BHK, you have to pay a lot, but at the same time you have your own room. You don't have to worry about another roommate in your room. So the hybrid cloud provider uses both public and private cloud capabilities. So they can use a little bit of the private cloud advantages and a little bit of the public cloud. So it is like a mixed model that can be tailored based upon the organization's requirement. These are the three types of cloud providers based on what people are ready to do. Banking, for example, or even the defense sector or the government sector, maybe they're more comfortable with the private cloud because they don't mind spending a lot. Startups, which don't have a lot of revenue right now, but they want to take care of cloud capabilities, they can use public cloud providers because it's not very expensive, but they get all the advantages of the cloud. They don't have to worry about maintaining an on-premise data center. They don't have to worry about taking care of all the infrastructure costs, and they can make use of all the wonderful capabilities that the cloud provides. Hybrid, maybe it would be somewhere in between where people don't want to spend too much, but they need their own privacy and they have a little bit of bandwidth when it comes to spending. So hybrid is a mix of these two. There are many cloud providers in the market. You must have heard about AWS or Amazon Web Services. You must have heard about GCP, Google Cloud Provider, or even Azure, that is really popular. So all these cloud providers have a history, have different services that they provide, which is very important to understand in order to make a decision on where you want to host your applications. And remember, cloud provider doesn't only cater to big organizations. You can host a website on AWS as well. So that is basically, on Amazon Web Services. So that is basically you using the cloud. You can go into Google Drive and upload your documents. That is also the cloud because all your documents are centrally hosted. You don't have to worry about keeping the documents on your hard drive or on your computer or on your laptop. What if you lose them? How will you maintain it? How will you maintain the privacy? I'll come to all of that in a while, but just wanted to put that note in your mind. Now, let me just show a short demo because I've been talking a lot here. I've been talking about cloud providers. How does a cloud look like? So it's not an abstract concept that's in the air. And since I'm well acquainted with GCP or Google Cloud Provider, I'm going to show a short demo here so you know how it looks like. So I'm sorry about that. I'll just share my screen then. So I hope you all can see my screen right now. And for those of you who are on your or who are on your mobile phones, I will zoom in a while so you can see all this more clearly. So as you can see here, this is a Google Cloud platform. This is how a cloud looks like. So maybe not as you had imagined, or maybe many of you have already had exposure to this, but I just wanted to show how a cloud platform looks like. And as you can see here, there's a dashboard in which you can see all your activity, and you can see all the recommendations here. So there's a lot of capability that a cloud provider gives you. It is not just, it's not rocket science. It's not very complicated. It's extremely simple. So you can see the status. You can also see your billing for that matter, because you want to know how much you're spending, right? If you're going overboard with your spending, or if you're spending less, more. So the billing, you have a billing data here as well. You have monitoring. What do I mean by monitoring? You can monitor whatever is happening in your applications, who's gaining access to it, who's coming in, coming out. You have error reporting. As you can see, there's a lot on the cloud. So this is how a cloud platform looks like. You can always go, and there are a lot of navigation options here. So it's a one-stop shop when it comes to cloud applications. You don't have to worry about having a physical data center where you go, you work on the servers, you switch it on, you do something. No, this is very simple. You just have to go into the console and do whatever you want to do at the click of a button. You can see how simple this is, right? You can create projects, you can set up monitoring, you can even look at the billing for that matter, which is not always there with the physical data center. You don't know how much electricity you're consuming, you don't know how much you're spending. So definitely you can see billing here. You can set up billing alerts. Like for example, you can set, okay, if I spend more than $200, send me an alert so I know that I'm spending more than what I'm supposed to spend, right? So that is where billing comes into play. You have resources here, so you know what all you're using. Like I know I'm using storage and I'm using cloud functions. If I want to stop something, I can directly do it from here. So it's this homepage is a one-stop shop. You can customize it the way you want to. You have getting started guides. So you can see it's extremely simple to use a Google, any kind of cloud platform. Amazon Web Services and Azure is also very similar. It is very, very user intuitive. Any beginner can go and use it. You can host your own website. You can host your own DNS, anything you want to do on a Google Cloud platform. So this is how it works. And of course, like I said, you have a lot of menu options out here. So now that you have an idea of how a platform looks like, a cloud provider looks like, I think things will be much more clear as we move on. So I will switch back to the presentation. So now, because we're done with the demo, what is cloud migration? Now, you're an organization that has decided to move to the cloud. You have decided, okay, cloud is the best thing for me. I can make best use of all the capabilities. I don't want the headache of a physical data center. What will I do? You would like to migrate to the cloud. Now, as the word mentions, migration is the movement of on-premise or any other cloud provider onto the cloud provider of your choice. You can move from an on-premise data center to the cloud or to GCP, for example, or you can move from another cloud provider, like for example, AWS to GCP to make use of all the cloud native capabilities of Google Cloud. What do we mean by cloud native capabilities? You will be hearing this word again and again. It basically means all the cloud features. So, I mean, the cloud has a different kind of environment, as you saw. How to make best use of the environment and all the application and all the capabilities that are provided, that is called the cloud native capability. So any kind of movement of your infrastructure, applications or data from on-premise to the cloud or from another cloud provider to the cloud is called cloud migration. Before we move on, I want you to really think of a very simple example. You're planning to move from one house to another. So what do you do first? First, you look at everything that is around you. Okay, I want to move my table, I want to move my couch, I want to move my bed, I want to move a lot of stuff. For example, I have a lot of books that I want to move. You will first assess everything that's around in your house. Then you will go and see how big the new house is. If you're moving from a smaller house to a bigger house, you have a lot more space. But if you're moving from a bigger house to a smaller house, you need to make sure that you only take the things that fit into the house, right? You cannot just take a queen bed and realize your room is really small. It's not going to handle a double bed. So that is what you do. After that, you actually do the movement. You sign up with any movers or packers, or you rent a truck and you move all your furniture and all your books and everything that you have in your house. First you pack it and then you move it. So the actual act of movement happens, and once you move, what will happen? You will set all of it in the house. You will make sure that everything is set well and you move it in the house. So that is what cloud migration does. First, these are the 4 phases of a cloud migration process. First is the assessment phase. In that, the organizations look at all the data, applications, and everything they have, and they assess it. Next, they plan. So how do we do the movement? They will plan around all the data they have, how the actual movement has to happen. They'll have a document with all the thorough planning. That is a planning process, which is extremely important, because without planning, you cannot move. Next is the actual migration or the deployment phase. In that, you migrate your entire data onto the cloud. So this migration process you can use different tools, you can choose the method you want to use, and you can migrate onto the cloud. And finally, we have the optimize phase. What do I mean by optimize? Once you move to the cloud, you need to adjust everything and set it right and make use of all the cloud capabilities. That is called optimization. This is extremely simple. Think about all these 4 steps when you're moving from one house to another house. Assess, plan, migrate, and optimize. So this is how a cloud migration process looks like. And once you when you're actually doing the migration, there are three types of migration that you can do. First is lift and shift. What do I mean by lift and shift? You just take all your stuff and dump it into the new house. You move it into the new house. That is lift and shift. Similarly, when it comes to a cloud, you just take all your data and applications and you move it directly to the cloud without making any changes to it. That is a lift and shift approach. It doesn't involve a lot of cost, it doesn't involve a lot of effort. It is just lifting all the data you have, the code as it is, and moving it onto the cloud. Next, we have move and improve, which means you just make small changes to the data so it fits well within the cloud environment, and you move it onto the cloud. So this would involves medium effort. It's not a lot of effort, and cost wise also is very effective, and you can make use of all the cloud capabilities. There are some features that are not available in the cloud, or some softwares that are not supported. In that, you make minor changes and you move it. That is move and improve. Last, we have rip and replace. This basically means doing away with the code. So you throw the code away and you write an entirely new code based on the cloud native environment, and you move it there. So that is rip and replace. This is not confusing. Just think about the house example that I used. You can either take all your furniture, all your books, and directly keep it in the new house. Or you can decide, okay, this bed is not going to fit in my new house. What do I do? I'll make some changes to the bed. Maybe I'll remove the frame. I will make sure it is of certain dimension, and then I'll fit it in the room. That is move and improve. That is, you're moving and making small amendments or small changes to make sure it fits in the new place. Last is rip and replace, which means you throw everything off, you throw all your furniture, you sell it off, or you do whatever, and you buy an entirely new furniture set for your new house. That is rip and replace. As you can see, cost wise, rip and replace is very expensive as compared to lift and shift. Also, in terms of effort, rip and replace would mean writing a code from scratch. So it's a lot of effort. But it depends on what the company wants. If they want to make full use of the cloud native capabilities, they would like to go with rip and replace. Or if it's very simple application that is maybe encountering an end of life or something, they don't really care. So at that moment, lift and shift would work the best. So just depending upon the use cases, there's a lot more deep dive that I can do. But since this is just a foundation class, I'm just going to scratch the surface here and mention these three terms. Remember these three when you're doing any kind of cloud migration. Next, cloud services. I keep talking, I showed you a cloud console, right? There are so many services in the menu option. Broadly classified, there are three kinds of services that any cloud providers offer. One is infrastructure as a service. Second one is platform as a service. And the third one is software as a service. You must have heard these terms being thrown around, right? IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Basically, what is infrastructure as a service? It is a service provided by the cloud provider where the hardware is given to you. So basically, they give an infrastructure like a virtual machine on which you can run your own application, you can configure it the way you want to, and they will take care of all the infrastructure needs. So that is called infrastructure as a service. Second is platform as a service. This is very similar to infrastructure as a service, other than that you get an operating system along with the hardware that is provided by the cloud provider. In that, you don't have to worry about updating the operating system or any kind of patches on that. That is taken care of by the cloud provider. So that is platform as a service. Last we have is software as a service, that the hardware as well as software is provided to you, and you just have to worry about going into the console and writing your own code. You don't have to worry about security patches, you don't have to worry about maintaining the operating system or doing any kind of updates. You just have to go write your code and deploy your application. What's the difference, like I just mentioned, between these three? Infrastructure as a service, you have a very low managed, like the cloud provider doesn't manage a lot here. They just give you a hardware that you can use, but all the customization has to be done by you. So the organization takes care of all the customization. They can choose the operating system they want, they can choose the memory they want, core, anything you can think of. So it's highly customizable in nature. Think about this like an open room. You get an open room and you can decorate it the way you want to. You can put whatever fixtures you want to. You can put the lights of your choice, the furniture of your choice, television, anything for that matter. That is infrastructure as a service. What is platform as a service? In that the hardware and the operating system is provided to you. Think about this like a semi-furnished house that you get. In that you get the house, you get a little bit of maybe the lights and fan and everything. So that is a semi-furnished house for you. The hardware and the operating system is provided by the cloud provider. What is software as a service? In that the hardware and the software is provided to you. It's like a fully furnished house. You just have to go and set your things up and start working. That is how software as a service works. So what are the examples of that? Talking about Google Cloud Platform, compute engine is an example of infrastructure as a service, in that you have to, so basically in infrastructure as a service, you can customize the VM according to your choice and just deploy it on the cloud. Platform as a service example is App Engine that we have on Google Cloud Platform. Don't worry about all of this right now. I'm going to show a demo to explain what I'm saying. And software as a service, one very simple example of that is Google Drive that you're using right now. Google Gmail, Google Drive, so any Google Workspace applications are software as a service. You just have to go create your own document, upload your own photos, and everything else, right from the operating system to patches, security patches, infrastructure, everything is taken care of by the cloud provider. You just have to go and upload your documents. So that's the software as a service. Now, time for a short demo again. I'm going to show you a Google Cloud, everything on Google Cloud Platform, and I'm switching between the screens now. Yeah, so as you can see, this is the Google Cloud Platform that we have. In that, I'll show you an example of compute engine. What is compute engine? So using compute engine, you can deploy your own VM instances, and this is an infrastructure as a service. I will tell you why I'm calling it an infrastructure as a service. As you can see here, you can create your own VM instance. So for example, you want to deploy an application, you can create your own virtual machine here, which is taken care of completely by the cloud provider. You can click on create. Here, so you can see, you can put in the name, you can put in labels by region, basically where you want to host it. So you can maybe choose US West, for example, and the zone. So that is the sub region of the particular region. So you can choose this, and the machine configuration. Now you see where I'm going at, right? You're just given a house and everything else you have to do. So it's very, very customizable. You can choose the CPU, you can choose memory optimization, you can choose the machine type here. You can also choose the boot disk. Like there are a lot of choices out here. If you see, you have Debian, you have Red Hat, you have Ubuntu, you have Windows Server, a lot of it. So you can choose whatever you want to. You can choose a firewall rules, as in you can allow any kind of traffic you want. And finally, you can also look at the pricing and create it. I'm not going to create this for the demo because I don't want to incur a price right now, but you just need to click the create button. Now you can see, this is extremely simple. You just have to fill in the details based on your use case and click a create button. It is simple, intuitive, and highly customizable. And also you can see, how much you'll be billed on a monthly basis, how much you'll be billed on an hourly basis. So you have everything here to make the right choice. This is an infrastructure as a service in which everything is highly customizable, and at the same time, you can maintain it the way you want to. This is a compute engine. So you'll be using this a lot once you start using Google Cloud Platform or you start taking courses. So remember that this is an infrastructure as a service offering. The next one I talked about is platform as a service. So App Engine is Google's platform as a service offering. In that you can create an application. Like you can see here, you can choose a region, you can choose US East or anything, and you can create the app. I'm not going to click on create the app because I don't want to incur charges. But as you can see, compared to a compute engine where you had so many choices, you can customize it the way you want to. You can choose the memory, GPU, CPU, anything you want. This is very different. Like you don't have a lot of customization options, but at the same time, a lot of it is taken care of by Google Cloud Platform. You don't have to worry about the operating system, the patches, and all the maintaining the operating system. But at the same time, it has a lot of capabilities that you want. You can choose the region you want, and once you have the application created, you can customize it to the extent that Google Cloud allows you to. This is platform as a service, App Engine. So, and software as a service, like I discussed, Google Drive or Firebase is very, very popular in Google Cloud Platform that you can use. It is basically an event-driven application, but at the same time, very simple example that all of you have already used. I'm going to use that, which is Google Drive. So you're just going to Google Drive, you upload your documents, and that's all you do. You don't have to choose the region, you don't have to choose the other capabilities, you don't have to create your application from scratch. You just go there and you upload your documents. So these are the three examples of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. This is what cloud providers offer. Of course, there are a lot of more details into that, like sometimes they have function as a service, they have blockchain as a service, but I'm just giving a broad categorization because this is just a fundamental level course. I'll stop this and then I'll move on to the presentation again. So now you have moved your applications onto the cloud or you're contemplating moving, you have to make sure that your applications are secure, right? You cannot just overlook the aspect of security because the cloud provider is handling a lot of things. Security is a shared responsibility of the cloud provider and the organization. What do you mean by shared responsibility? Both the organization and the cloud providers are responsible for ensuring safety. So what is cloud security? They are basically technologies, processes, policies, and controls to secure your applications on the cloud. This is very, very important because you have to make sure that all your data is secure on the cloud and no one is getting any unauthorized access to that. Because if your data is not secure, you're defeating the entire purpose of using cloud. So this is extremely important. Now, what are the types of attacks? You have to understand the types of attack to make sure that your data is secure on the cloud. First, we have an active attack. In that, the attacker or the hacker actively tries to get inside your application and tries to break it, tries to find vulnerabilities, get inside, and actively attack it. So that is called an active attack. The second one we have is passive. As the word says, this is more of a passive aggressive form in which an attacker or a hacker can be lurking around your application, just looking for loopholes. So they are maybe looking at it, they're monitoring it from for some time, and one day they realize there's a little vulnerability using which they can get in. These two types of attacks are extremely common when it comes to your data on the cloud. Think about this from your house example. You have locked your house and you go into sleep. A thief can come, use a duplicate lock or use any other means to get inside the house and actively break in. That is called an active attack. Or the thief can be just lurking around your house and one day he slowly sneaks inside when you have an open window. That is a passive attack. So both these attacks are very common and you need to have very, very strong security measures in order to mitigate or even prevent these two attacks from happening. There's a big model that I'm not going to go into detail right now, but just a broad overview here. So having a strong system and having active monitoring is extremely important to mitigate or even prevent any kind of attack from happening on the cloud. Now, when I'm discussing about the security on cloud, there's some security best practices you need to take into consideration. The first one I have here is identity and access management, which means you need to provide the right level of authorization or the right amount of access to each person. You cannot just provide an editor access to someone who just needs to view your document, right? You give them a viewer access. So there are a lot of policies around that, and it is very, very, there's a deep dive that I have done before, but right now I'm just scratching the surface. And just remember, always give the privilege of, always follow the idea of least privilege when it comes to identity and access management. If someone needs to view your application, just give them viewer access. Don't give them any access about that. That way you can secure your data on the cloud. Like even if anyone gains access to the data on the cloud, they cannot do anything or they cannot play around with your data, delete anything or do any damage to your application. Next is firewall. What is a firewall? Think about shopping. When you go on to Amazon.com and shop, you can get inside the, Amazon can post different, let's say different things on the shopping website, but you cannot go and edit that, right? So there's one way of communication that is happening. That is called firewall. It is basically allowing the right kind of access for the traffic, whether it is HTTP or HTTPS traffic, to make sure that no one is getting an unauthorized access to your data, or there's only one form of communication that is happening. Having good firewall rules ensures that their data is kept secure from any hackers or intruders. Next is active monitoring. Having all the security measures is good, but if you are not monitoring, if you're not seeing whether there are more people who are lurking around to get inside your system, you won't be able to avoid any of the passive attacks. Think of this like a CCTV outside a shop. So the CCTV camera will keep monitoring who all are maybe keeping an eye out, who all are trying to enter inside without access. So monitoring is extremely important to make sure that there's nothing unauthorized going on, and cloud has really good capabilities to monitor your applications. Next, we have data encryption. What is encryption? It is basically storing the data in a weird format that is not understandable by anyone who tries to gain access to it. Think about this like a password. Sometimes when you put in a password, it gets changed to some weird symbols, right? That is because your data gets encrypted. So even if a hacker or an attacker gets access to, for example, your credit card data, they cannot make sense of it and they cannot misuse it. So encrypting the data, whether it is in transit or at rest. So by rest, I mean whether it is getting stored, it is extremely important to have that data encrypted. And last, we have testing. So testing from the structure from the inside, like there are a lot of testers in every company, whether they do penetration testing, functional testing, they have to make sure that their applications are secure. So they have to put on the hat of the attacker or the hacker, and they have to think from their point of view to make sure the system is really, really strong and there's no one who's attacking it from the outside. So testing is extremely important, because having all the security measures and monitoring is one thing, but you need to make sure your structure is really strong. So these are the security best practices. Now, I'll just conclude this and mention what all I just talked about. There are three kinds of cloud providers: public, private, and hybrid. Depending upon your budget and your use case, you can choose either a public, private, or a hybrid cloud provider, and all three of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. So, hybrid makes use of the capabilities of both the public and the private cloud. There are different cloud providers out in the market. You must have heard about Google Cloud Platform, Amazon Web Services, or Azure for that matter. So these are all the cloud providers. There are many more cloud providers, whether it's private, public, or hybrid available. Services. Cloud has infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. In infrastructure as a service, the hardware is provided to you as a part of the cloud service. Platform as a service, the hardware and the operating system is provided to you. And in software as a service, the hardware and the software is provided to you. I showed you an example of Compute Engine, which is Google's infrastructure as a service. I showed you an example of App Engine, which is Google's platform as a service. And finally, I told you about Google Docs or Google Drive that you use, any kind of Google Workspace, which is software as a service. As in, you just go inside and you upload your documents or you run the application. You don't have to worry about any of the infrastructure maintenance. And finally, I talked about security. Security is a shared responsibility of both the cloud providers as well as the organization. You have to remember, just because a house is locked doesn't mean that no one can get inside. There are a lot of other security measures you have to take into consideration to make sure you have a secure environment. It's the same with the cloud provider. So the right amount of accesses, following the security best practices like having good monitoring, testing, is very important when it comes to securing your applications on the cloud. Once you remember all of this, the right kind of cloud provider, the right kind of service you need, and the right kind of security, you'll have a robust cloud model using which you can leverage all the wonderful capabilities that cloud providers provide. So this is what I have here to conclude the presentation, and I'll just open the ground for questions.
Hello, ma'am. That was a truly interesting session. The way you broke down the cloud fundamentals into these simple analogies, the house one, it was brilliant. And we got quite a few questions because everyone was listening because it was so interesting. So, while we were doing the demo, we came across something called the cloud function. What is the cloud function?
So cloud functions basically is an event-driven application. Like I'll give an example. So for example, you have an application that is running, and it's a gaming. For example, you're doing some gaming. The minute you go on to the next level, you want an event to be triggered. For example,
Okay.
you want acknowledgement, yeah, that you have gained 10 more coins, you have gained 2 more lives. So that's an event-driven application. So basically, Cloud Functions helps with that. You can set up your events. You can set up certain trigger. What do I mean by a trigger? Trigger means basically an event that is happening based on which a certain response is triggered. So Cloud Functions helps with that. So it is includes Google Cloud's function as a service offering. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but basically it's just an event-driven function and an application using which you can trigger certain events. Like you can ask the application to delete some data, create new things, or even modify certain things based on an event that is happening. So that is what Cloud Functions is about, and it is very interesting. I mean, many people are using Cloud Functions. So
Ma'am, so we are students and we get a lot of projects and stuff and we do coding and everything. We need a place to store all of this so that we have it compiled at the end of the day. And there are many, many cloud providers available throughout and they have different functionalities also. Which cloud providers do students prefer, or like which one should they use so that they have everything compiled together, as in it's easy for them to access it or whatever?
that's a very loaded question. So all the, like you said, cloud providers have their own capabilities and have their own advantages and disadvantages. It basically depends upon the ease of access, like how much comfortable you are with a certain cloud provider. Google Cloud Platform or Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services is used by a lot of people who are interested in hosting their own websites or DNS, and because it has been in the market for a very very long time, it is very user intuitive, and they have a lot more products and features
Okay.
compared to maybe GCP or Azure is mainly used by defense or maybe let's say little larger organizations, but I think it completely depends upon your comfort. There's no
Okay.
particular reason why, for example, I am into GCP and not AWS or Azure. Doesn't mean one is less than the other, but I think
Yes.
it's the ease of access and how much comfortable you are with the interface and what you want to do. Like for AI ML, I've heard that GCP has really good capabilities. So if it is
Okay.
on that side, yeah, and so it completely depends upon your use case.
And also, many of us would be interested in, programming all of the programming in cloud computing or using the softwares as such. Can we use this in the general IDE or VS Code that we use? Like, is that somehow related? Can we modify the code or whatever on these IDE and VS codes?
Of course, you can run your applications on the cloud. Cloud supports a lot of languages. Like even if you know Python, Python is a very popular language when it comes to making AI ML applications, for example. Or you have different, coding. So language is not a barrier when it comes to the cloud.
Cloud.
They
Okay.
support a lot of languages, yeah. So you can go in and code. I would suggest going on to Quick Labs. I'll just yeah, I can maybe share this later, or if you want, I'll just share it in the chat so you can put it on YouTube. It's called Quick Labs,
Okay.
QWIQLABS. Yeah. In that, you have a lot of quests. So by quest, they'll ask you to complete a certain task for you to
Okay.
get a badge. Yeah, so you can just play around there for your particular cloud provider, and then you can see how to host your applications and what language to use. And it's very very intuitive. Like if you know Python, you can easily go in and code, or any other language of your choice. So yes, definitely you can play around and you can make use of the capabilities.
Talking about security, by getting more dependent on cloud services, are we trading data security and integrity? Isn't it like we are giving away the data, even though there are privacy policies, but there's always this question about security?
Right. That's the biggest concern people have when it comes to moving to the cloud. I know one company which is in the banking sector, and they were very worried that a lot of customer data, credit card information, a lot of private information is there which they don't want to put on the cloud. That is why encryption and having all the security measures is important. There's this trust model called a zero trust model. You'll be hearing about this a lot. But what do I mean by zero trust? By zero trust, I mean don't trust anyone inside or outside the organization. everyone should have a different layer of authentication, like multi-layer or dual layer of authentication, using which they can gain access to data on the cloud. No, you're not giving away the data at all. You're securing it. So you are encrypting it when you're securing it. You are making sure that no one gets access to it except for the people who need access to it. Like,
Okay.
just because it's on Google Cloud Platform doesn't mean that any of the Google employees can access it. So
All
if you
right.
have the right accesses in place and you follow all the security best practices, you have a zero trust model. Like, don't trust anyone inside or outside the organization. You're making sure that your data is secure. So follow the security best practices and your data will definitely be secure.
Okay. Also, ma'am, like cloud fundamentals and cloud computing as a whole, it's a very upcoming field. Like it's booming drastically. So, are we going to reach a point once in the future that there is no internal data stored on our devices, but everything on the cloud? Is that possible? Like,
In an ideal world, yes, but at the same time we also need something, yeah, that is physically stored. So for that you have to make cloud accessible to everyone. Like, if I go and
okay,
tell my mom, who's not very tech savvy, and ask her to store the data on the cloud, she's probably going to wonder what I'm talking about, because for her, cloud, it's a completely abstract concept. But yes, having everything on Google Drive, a lot of us are moving towards that. Like, even the WhatsApp data or the chats that we have, or anything for that matter, it gets stored on Google Drive. So in an ideal world, yes, I think it will be wonderful. But at the same time, we cannot say that this is going to happen in the near future, because a lot of people don't know about the cloud, or even there's a lot of concerns associated with the cloud. So,
mm,
first of all, these cloud providers need to make sure they have a robust model, gain the trust of people, have a lot of engagement around it, and maybe majority of the data we can see it moved on to the cloud. Because, as you know, I mean, it's really secure than having it on your hardware. You can use your hard drive, your computer can crash, but once it's on the cloud, you don't really have to worry about maintaining that data. So
okay. So we don't have to worry about the data, but uh, can the data once lost be ever recovered? Like, for example, an organization is there which is providing the cloud services, so they would have their own servers. If something happens to their server, will our data be destroyed forever, or is there a way in which we could possibly retrieve it? Because once you lose data, usually you cannot get it back. So that's a question.
that's an excellent question. Yes. So, remember, cloud providers, they have a lot of region zones, and the data is stored at various places. Even data, I mean, that has not been accessed since the last 10 years, even that is stored in a certain place. So, there are Arctic places where they actually have storage centers which are underground as well. So, you can say they're making use of all the resources, and the data is stored. So, even if you delete a data somewhere in the archives, it is there. Of course, it will be very difficult to retrieve it, but it doesn't mean that it is gone forever. So remember, once your data is on the cloud, it can get archived, it can get stored. So it doesn't permanently go away from the face of the earth. Of course, retrieving it will be a very, very big process. There are no guarantees, but yes, it's much easier than having a computer where, for example, your data gets lost completely and you cannot retrieve it back at all. So yes, that is there.
This was amazing. My mind is blown. It's such a vast field, and there is so much more to know. It was really amazing. And, ma'am, we are done with the questions, but we are sure that all of us are going to go up and use the quick labs and everything to look more into this topic because it is fascinating.
Mhm.
So, uh,
Yeah,
one
and
last
just a
question.
minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure,
Sorry.
sure, Akriti.
No,
Please
no.
bring that. No, yeah, go
Uh,
ahead.
okay. We are many of us are students who are aspiring to pursue a career in cloud computing. So, do you have any advice for us, or could you tell us how your journey was?
Very interesting. So yes, cloud, of course, like I said, it is a very, very, it's a good skill set to have in the market right now. So what my journey was, I basically started with simple courses. I went on to Coursera one day and I decided I want to learn more about the cloud. That is how it all started. So Coursera has really good courses for fundamentals, even deep dives for that matter, and that way I could get a lot of knowledge and hands-on, because once I know the fundamentals, I'll be able to get I'll be able to understand where I'm going with it. So I took courses. So there are a lot of places available: Udemy, Coursera, take your pick. There's a lot right now online. So Once you start learning about that, get a lots of hands-on as well, like go on to quick labs, use the various quests, and Google also has a career readiness program. So I don't know if your college is affiliated with that, but some of them, I mean, they will help you I mean, get yourself ready for a career in the cloud. So definitely there are a lot of resources out there, and if anyone wants, they can contact me directly on LinkedIn to learn more, or just understand, I mean, what all the certifications and all the courses are all about. So I can actually share my LinkedIn ID if anyone is interested to connect with me. I should have had it on the slide, sorry about that.
No problem, ma'am. We will forward it on the YouTube live chat.
There you go. Yeah. If you
Yes,
want to
thank you.
learn more, yeah, because certifications are a good way to get to know the not only the subject, because you're preparing for something, so you're doing a thorough investigation, but it also increases your credibility in the market, job market,
Hmm.
because then people would know that you have a robust knowledge, and that's why you are able to gain the certification. So there are various associate level certifications that are available for GCP or AWS or Azure for that matter. Azure Fundamentals is a really popular one, so
Hmm.
we can talk more about that in case anyone is interested.
So, I think this brings us to the end of the session. On behalf of the entire ISTE team and VIT, we thank you for coming to this session and organizing it for us. We truly had an amazing time listening to you break down such complicated fundamentals into such simple ones. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Akriti, and thanks a lot to the entire team, especially Manasvi. I just want to shout out here. You have done a wonderful job just keeping me informed and just organizing this entire thing. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you all of us for joining us today on this session. ISTE VIT is sure to bring you more sessions in the following weeks. Thank you.